Hey folks, this is John Miller, Executive Editor with WV News. We would like to welcome you to Ask the Experts, featuring John Halterman of Beacon Wealth Management. John is the founder, owner, and certified wealth strategist at Beacon Wealth Management. You can find out more at bwmwv.com. And now live from the studios of the Exponent Telegram in Clarksburg, West Virginia, let's Ask the Expert. John, lots of folks like to talk about or at least think about retirement. Your focus is on retirement income strategies. What's the key to successful retirement planning?
Well, you know what, John? Everybody comes to me with one thing in mind, and that is they say to me, hey, John, I need my investments to be able to live off of, but I don't want to outlive my income. I mean, that's a big, big deal. People worry about that. And so the number one thing they'll say is, how do I take an income from the portfolio I have and make that last the rest of my life? The second thing they say, because in a perfect world, we put in no risk, but we have to be able to beat inflation. And even though interest rates have gone up tremendously over the last couple of years, it's still not enough to keep up with inflation. So the next thing people think about is, how do I make enough money to where I can keep up with purchasing power? Because if you think about this, okay, from a perspective of inflation, what cost you more, your most recent car or your first-time home? And for most people, their most recent car actually costs more than their first-time home. And then the third thing that people ask me about is, okay, John, you've given me this worry-free income that I know is going to last for the rest of my life. You're helping me beat inflation. But eventually, I'm going to pass away. So how do I take what I have, pass it on to my heirs in the most tax advantageous way? So those are the three things that when it comes to retirement income strategy that I have to focus on as an advisor.
In terms of that, with the retirement income strategies, you're hearing a lot about, you see a lot of these things about gold and silver and all this different type of thing playing into fact. What's your thoughts? I mean, what's the right pathway?
Well, the one thing I know is I don't want to sit here and say that any one asset class is going to be automatic, because unfortunately, a lot of times when you see things about gold and silver, that's somebody trying to sell you an ad. And they're trying to say, hey, look, whether it's crypto, gold, or silver, what we really want to be thinking about is objectives. Like everyone has a different objective. And so as a simple example, one of my biggest worries is what I call sequence of returns. What sequence of returns is 2008. Let's say you're getting ready to retire and it's 2008, okay? And you're thinking, okay, I've saved $1 million. I'm going to do what I consider to be the 4% distribution rule. And that is I'm going to take 4% of the $1 million. Sounds simple, right? Because you're taking $40,000 a year, assuming that the market makes 10%, you're going to grow money and you walk away and you think, wow, this is the simplest thing I did. And if you lived in the 90s, that would be the case. But in 2008, the market's dropped 56%. So all of a sudden, you have $1 million, okay? You took out 40,000 and then you dropped 56%. Now all of a sudden, you're in the hole. And you can't just recover your money because you're taking out money as the market's going down. And so that's what we have to worry about is we have to say, okay, well, what should I do? And so one of the things I like to do is I don't want to take money out of the market or use the market as an income source. I want to be able to carve a piece of someone's portfolios and put it in something that I feel is going to be protected from a principal standpoint, and only take that from there, because this way, if the markets go down, we don't have to worry about the inability to recover. Because one thing that people don't realize is this: a 50% loss is not made up by a 50% gain. I mean, think about the math. You have $1 million. All of a sudden you lose 50%. Now you're down to $500,000. So people think, well, how much does it take to gain back? Guess what? It's 100%. But if you took an additional 40 out, well, it's even more. So there's a huge compounding effect. So we got to make sure that we divide this up appropriate. So it's not necessarily about one product. It's literally about having the appropriate strategy.
Well, John, thanks. That's a great response, but I want to get into a little bit more. Can you explain the segmentation a little bit more for us?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the first thing we just talked about was income. And so from an income perspective, we got to be able to say, how do we get that worry-free income that's not going to be affected by the market? But the second thing is we got to get growth. And so what I'm concerned about is, okay, I'm going to take this money out over the course of the first 10 years. That's your first bucket of money per se. Well, the second bucket is I need that to grow at a rate of somewhere between 5 to 8%. And so I've got to build a portfolio that's going to target downside risk, because my concern is that, yes, I want to leverage time, because the more time we have, the more potential growth we can have. But I also know that the window of 10 years is not that long. And so if we were in the market, there's actually been negative 10-year periods in the market. So I have to use what I consider to be a tactical portfolio in the second one. The tactical portfolio says this, market conditions are going to change. So instead of just buying and holding, I want to make sure that as market conditions change, that we actually manage and actively manage that portfolio for those market conditions. So as an example, I'm going to rate the market conditions between 1 and 4. 1 being that, hey, we think that everything's going to work, it's going to be great. 4 meaning that it's horrible. And so in a 1, if everything's working, I'm going to be more growth oriented. And so I'm going to invest in things that we think are going to provide growth over the next few years. But let's say the markets go to a 4, or the economy goes to a 4. Well, that changes the game. Instead of being in offensive mode and trying to win, now I've got to be in defensive mode. Because the one thing I know, if the economy puts us in the tank, and let's say we have the markets dropping 30, 35, 40%, nobody wants to drop that way with their money. And so what I've got to do is shift our clients' money and say, now, how do we play defense with that money and minimize that downside exposure? So that's what we're going to do with the next component of someone's money.
Is there a third component?
There is, yeah, absolutely. Because remember what I said, we got to get some growth. So we got the income first, then we got the downside risk. Well, now we're going to get growth. And for most people, they try to avoid sectors because there's more volatility in sectors. But what I look at is, in a situation where we have this third segment, now we even have more time on our side. And so instead of being what I consider to be a traditional retiree, now we can say, okay, let's take this and take advantage of things that we think are opportunities. Well, one thing we know, the last 20 years have provided us great opportunities in 2 primary sectors. That is healthcare. Energy's been good, and also 3, I said 2, and then also technology. And so I want to be able to take advantage of growth opportunities for that third segmentation. Now, I'm not going to say that's the only thing we put in there, but that's good examples of things we may put in there. Things that are going to be more growth-oriented, things that we believe are going to offer us the most opportunity for growth without the worry of taking any income.
Probably there's not an easy answer to this, because I think you're going to tell me that it depends on what your goals are. But so is there like, oh, well, I'll put 20% here and 40% here and 40% here, or is that all dependent on what those goals are?
Here's what's going to be number one dependence: how much money you need. Okay, so let me give you some simple examples. Let's say you have $1 million, okay, and you need an income of $50,000 a year from that portfolio. So when we multiply that out, we need 10 years of income. That could mean that half the portfolio needs to be secure, because I want to make sure, again, that your number one objective is, how do I provide you an income that's going to last for the lifetime? So as we're taking that money out, I want to make sure we have enough in protected type assets. And when I say protected, meaning principal protected. But I also need to make sure that as we liquidate this part, that we're growing the other portion. And so depending on how much you need, whether you need a 3% distribution, 4% distribution, or 5%, is going to depend on how much we allocate towards each of those segments.
John, I tell you, we call this Ask the Expert because you bring so much knowledge to the table. Is there a parting shot, they call them, Is there a parting shot to give to our viewers on what you believe they need to do right now to help their retirement?
Yes. The one thing I see all the time is people have a tendency to avoid things. They have a tendency to put their heads in the sand. And one thing I'll tell you is this: you can't achieve anything if you avoid it. It's no different than a health condition. If you start seeing an ailment or something happening and you let it go, more than likely it's going to get worse. And so what I tell people is, if you have uncertainty of any kind, or you don't have an answer, you're not sure, let's say it's about taxes, let's say it's about what's the right allocation, no matter what it is, what I tell people, take the time, because I get it. It's scary, because you're going into unknown territory. You're going into a big bad advisor's office, and you're letting them talk to you. And so what you got to do is say, hey, look, this is about me. And if you go to the right advisor, it's going to be about you, because the right advisor is going to take the time to listen, and they're going to take the time to understand you, and then they're going to come up with the appropriate strategy based upon your unique circumstances. And so now, granted, I get it, salespeople have a tendency to get you a little nervous, but that's not what good advisors are. Good advisors provide great advice. And so don't let any type of thing like that hold you back from facing those things head on. And so that's what I would tell people is take action. Don't wait, because if you wait, unfortunately, it always gets worse.
Great advice from John Halterman of Beacon Wealth Management on Ask the Expert. Ask the Experts, featuring John Halterman of Beacon Wealth Management. John is the founder, owner, and certified wealth strategist at Beacon Wealth Management. You can find out more at bwmwv.com.